And it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. I'm Alexi. I'm going to be your GM this evening. Welcome, welcome. We are playing back again from the Broken Land, The Journey's First Step. We've been having a few little technical hiccups. As you can see, I am just a logo talking to you here because my camera's not working all the way. And Leah is slightly in and out, though I will let her back in a moment. I'll continue the intro in the meantime. We're playing this game through the Gauntlet community. You can find out all about the Gauntlet at gauntlet-rpg.com, where lots of cool games are happening each and every month. And you can follow the Gauntlet on Twitter at GauntletRPG to get the live updates, including on our upcoming Gauntlet Community Open Gaming, a time when anyone can play with us for free. So definitely check that out. Now, our game this evening, back again from the Broken Land, is an in-development game. Leah and I have been working on it together for publication in Codex magazine. Codex is another project of the Gauntlet. Codex puts out lots of cool original games, lots of incursions for Trophy or mysteries for Brindlewood Bay. Anyway, back again from the Broken Land is going to be one of those original Codex games cropping up, hopefully in Codex Home sometime soon. Back again from the Broken Land is a game of little people who have walked into a big war. The Doomslord's forces were gathered in the Broken Land, and for some reason, your small fellowship played a key role in their downfall. Now laden with stories to tell and burdens to bear, you set off on the journey home. But the Doomslord's hunters are still out there, and it's a long walk home back again from the Broken Land. So this game is inspired in a strong way by the more kind of melancholic, emotional, contemplative stretches of the works like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. We're very excited to be telling our own new story of small adventurers taking that long walk home. There's going to be stories, there's going to be meals, there's going to be perils, and I'm excited for all of it. Let's meet the folks who will be part of this game. So I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone to introduce yourself, real quick. Tell us your name, pronouns if you wish, online handle if you so desire. Starting off with Brandon.
Hi, I'm Brandon.
Wonderful. Chris, you're up next.
Hi, Chris Newton. I go by he, him pronouns. I don't have anything going online. I'm just here to play games and have fun.
Very good. Well, we're excited to be playing games and having fun with you. Leah, last but not least.
I'm Leah. I'm the co-writer of this game, and I'm on Twitter at Leah Labresco.
Fantastic. Good to have you all here. Let's start meeting these characters. You've gone ahead and built some characters, and I'd be excited to hear a little about each of them. Brandon, tell us about your shepherd.
My shepherd is Liriel, and she was one who stayed behind to find the lost in an area that the Doomslord, where the Doomslord armies had been. She came through looking for people who had managed to evade capture, who had hidden in the tall arid places or down in swamps or in crevices in the hills, to try to find them and lead them out of there before they starved or died of thirst or were captured by the hunters that inevitably come in the wake of the Doomslord armies in order to pursue stragglers.
That's right.
And so she is finally on her way, she hopes, home from this almost unending task that she's had herself.
Yeah, and you're a couple of the things you picked for this character. You have a much mended cloak, a warm and worn gaze, and as a gift you've received a lantern that can always be lit. Very good. If it's all right, let's move to so Leah, will you tell us about your birth? Or rather, let's move to Chris's character as Leah is rejoining. So Chris, will you tell us about your turncoat?
Sure. Harding is a small fellow, sort of unassuming, and he was not like the great sort of tragic turncoat. He was a small wedge sort of turncoat. He and his sister set out on this journey. His sister was the hero here, and he was the tag along. And when they were captured, the enemy knew that they could break him easily, and they had hoped to use him as a wedge to break his sister. That did not work. She escaped and ultimately rescued him. But in saving him, she had that sort of big hero moment that happens to big heroes in these great adventures, and she perished doing the right thing, and being a hero. And he has to march back from the broken land and tell their family what happened.
Heavy stuff, and I'm sure we'll get stories that will flesh out all of the the details here. But the other things to note for Harding is you've chosen a locket you can't remove, a darting and dancing gaze, and as a gift you've received a snatch of song you can't forget. So I'm excited about any and all stories coming out of that. Also, Leah, let's turn to you now. Will you tell us about your burglar?
So my burglar, Belby, originally went on this adventure to avoid answering any awkward questions about an antique goblet that probably was just mislaid. And who could have guessed anyone was going to be looking for it right then at that week? What a coincidence. So she skipped town on what she thought would be a short trip, but turned out to be an important mission to save the world. She may have gone through some personal growth on this journey, but we'll discover that through stories. In the meantime, she wears a purloined ring openly. She has an innocent and indignant gaze and cannot believe you would suspect her of any.
Oh, you're muted there. We lost you after an innocent and indignant gaze, I'm afraid. Oh, all right. While Leah sorts that out, I'll mention the last thing she had is a gift of a simple lock of hair. So let's answer a handful of questions about the Doomslord, about this great war that has happened in the very recent past here. So I'm going to go ahead and use and drop into our chat one of our pick lists here. And Brandon, why don't you tell me a little about who the Doomslord was? Shoot, the formatting didn't work great there. Let me try again. Was the Doomslord a corrupted immortal, a grasping wizard, a vicious warlord, a spurned heir, an enormous beast, or a living storm? So what are you thinking, kind of for the identity of the Doomslord there?
The Doomslord was a warlord who had managed to get his hands on the Crown of Shadows, an artifact that, among other things, allowed him to call up some of the dead to fight alongside his very considerable army.
That's excellent. Okay, yeah, hold right there. That gives us a very cool Doomslord, a vicious warlord with the Crown of Shadows. Let's find out what he wanted. Chris, I'm dropping into the chat some options for the Doomslord's goal. Was the Doomslord seeking dominion over the world, revenge on former friends, an end to time, elimination of all but their own creations, forbidden knowledge, or deliverance from their curse?
I feel like for the Doomslord that we've described, like an easy answer would be like dominion over the world, but I think something more interesting. I think deliverance from their curse. I think do you want me to elaborate on what I think the curse might be, or should we leave that to another question?
maybe say like one sentence about what you think the curse might be.
I think the curse had to do with because the crown of shadows was apparently an answer to it. I think they were caught in some sort of weird undeath state.
Got it. So somehow the Doomslord was himself like
some sort of broken undead sort of thing.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me. Let's see if I've got any. All right. Leah's saying it's okay if we pick the backstory things without her. That works. Let me yes. Yeah. Okay. Cool. We'll keep making choices. We'll fill Leah in, possibly via the chat, possibly via recap when she's able to rejoin. She's working on rebooting because the tech was not working out there. All right. So so there's a weapon the Doomslord is armed with according to our pick list. Now we've named the Crown of Shadows already. My is that related to do we want to tie that in with one of these things from the game's pick list just to weave things together nicely, because we've got a couple ideas here for what the Doomslord is armed with. I don't know, Brandon, any of those jump out at you?
Well, it's the Crown of Shadows. It has to go with their terrible shadow. The Doomslord, we think, is as Chris outlined, someone who is caught between life and death. Someone who died but basically can't make it to the afterlife. And so one of the things the Doomlord has is it has an awful shadow, casts an awful shadow which does not reflect the Doomlord's own posture. The shadow, the Doomlord's manner is said to be quite mild and soft spoken. The shadow is always terrifying, even when it does nothing. And it is and the Doomlord may have initially taken the crown to try and defeat his own shadow. Or thus gain freedom from it, but evidently that wasn't possible, and so he launched his forces on a quest to find whatever was missing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Possibly would allow him
spoiling the whole world in the process.
Break free of his of whatever is tethering him to this world.
Yeah, so here's what we know now. The Doomslord was a vicious warlord. He wore the crown of shadows and called up the souls of the dead. He was seeking deliverance from his curse. He was somehow caught between death and life himself, and he was armed with his terrible shadow, a shadow that does not reflect his own demeanor, that is sort of always grasping and murderous, even when the Doomslord's own manner is more kind of refined and courteous. If I'm correctly summarizing some of what we've put out there, great. That's fascinating. I love this Doomslord and the vibes we're getting here. Leah, let's give you a chance to speak into this backstory. The next question we have is, what is your hometown characterized by? I'll drop these options into the chat for easier reference. We got green rolling hills, we got salty breezes, swamps, aurora borealis, craggy peaks, vast fields of wheat. Any of those stick out to you?
I'm going to go with swamp full of croaking critters and houses up on stilts.
Nice. Oh, that's fun. Cool. Yeah. So a very kind of marshy vibe to the homeland that these characters come from.
A lot of like flat bottom boats and poles to get around.
Seaweed farms.
Very good. Chris, what quest drew you from your hometown to play a humble but crucial role in the Doomslord's downfall? Let me put this into the chat as well. There's delivering knowledge of a secret weakness, carrying a magic you could not understand, restoring a lost crown to its heir. Interesting. Is there another crown involved here, right? Bringing the true name of the Doomslord to someone who could use it. Any of these jumping out to you?
I really love that lost crown thing. Since we already have a crown of shadows on the Doomslord, I think like a crown of light or something equally like keyed into that would be awesome. I know that seems like an easy answer, but it fits just so well. I can't
absolutely. So
lots of magic items are in pairs. It makes perfect sense. I mean,
yeah. So there was another crown that had to be restored to a true heir in order to rally the nations against the Doomslord.
Of course, what the Doomslord was trying to get his hands on. The only thing that could oppose the Crown of Shadows.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Here we go. Let me put this one to Leah. What makes the Doomslord's hunters too dangerous to fight? Is it terrifying mounts? Is it many grasping hands? Command of the elements? When you strike one down, two spring back up. They spew acid and poisons. They wear impenetrable armor. Any of those exciting for you?
I think I'm going to go with they have many grasping hands.
So many hands, yeah. Many grasping hands on the Doomslord's hunters. Are those men-looking hands, do you think, or like what?
To be honest, like if you're close enough to tell for sure, you're not far enough to be able to tell anyone else.
Very fair, very fair. And then Brandon, this is interesting. There's a question about what makes them too dangerous to fight. There's also a question about what makes them too terrifying to face. So these are some different options about the hunters. Is it that they wear the faces of your fallen friends? They speak in the voices of people you left back home. They drain their surroundings of warmth, light, and color. They linger in your head if you look them in the eye. They inhale happiness and exhale despair, or they shine with terrifying righteousness. Any of those exciting for you as an option about the hunters?
Yes. Hang on just a second. I'm going to go with a with a hybrid of the first two.
That works, yeah.
Which is that they can actually mimic the voice of anyone they've captured. Which is how they catch a lot of people.
Yeah.
Once someone has been caught in their many-handed embrace or something like that, they steal their voice, or so it is said.
Terrifying, absolutely. Yeah, I can see why the Doomslord had these as some of his most trusted servants, and it's bad for the world. They're still out there, huh? But let's not worry about the hunters for now. Let's check in with our companions. If it's all right by you, I'm gonna set the scene and have us see some of our some of the beginning of this journey back home. So I think the first place we see on this journey is the steel-sown field. Chris, what has sprung up amid the detritus of battle on the steel-sown field?
I think there are these sort of vines of flowers, sort of like rose bushes that have sort of grown up around the various like swords and hilts and weapon handles and shields and stuff that have been scattered around the various bodies. And the flowers that bloom on these low vines have this sort of sickly sweet scent. Like when you first smell it, like on a breeze, it smells kind of sweet and pleasant. But as you approach, the closer you get to the flower, like the more pungent and like sort of rotted the scent becomes.
Oh yeah, that absolutely that sounds great. Yeah, so we see kind of maybe it's like midday, the sun is beating down, shining off some of the the bits of metal that have yet to be fully rusted in this field, but there are these thorny vines grown up and covering over many of the fallen pieces of armament, or even some like siege engines kind of left in disrepair on this field, and we catch that sickly sweet smell on the breeze as our trio of companions are setting off. You have to pass through this field, to trace your path home, but it's certainly a tad treacherous. Let's just get a little image of each of our companions. Like, what does it look like as they're beginning to make their way over the steel sown field? Liriel, what do we see of you beginning to traverse this place?
Liriel puts her staff into the ground and leans it against her shoulder and gives an enormous sigh at seeing this area, and is peering, trying to see past the low, dusty landscape to see beyond it into where the path might lie for the rest of us. She gestures the others to hold up.
Yeah, absolutely. Belby, what do we see of you on the steel sown field here?
I think Belby is still a little shell shocked by where we've left. So you see her kind of looking over some of what's been abandoned here, but sticking close to her companions, a little perhaps chastened by whatever has just occurred.
I see. And Harding, what would we, the viewing audience see of you as the trio of companions are beginning to make their way through this steel sown field covered with these thorny vines?
I think Harding he goes between like basically getting way too close to everybody and falling way too far behind. So he's constantly distracted as he's sort of glancing from side to side. With that, that little, you can see that little glint of just a little bit of paranoia still sticking around, because they've been trudging through battlefields for so long. Like, even though they know that this isn't an active battlefield anymore, like the habits are still there and the suspicion is still there. And so he goes from basically just falling a little bit too far behind and then having to scramble to catch up, and then like accidentally bumping into people when they like slow down or stop to get past some obstacle. As he's glancing from side to side and looking back over his shoulder, and and when he should be looking ahead, he keeps looking down instead of like in front of him, like just down at his feet or at something he sees on the ground or something like that.
Absolutely. Well, what I'm going to ask next is for someone to make a roll here to chart a course, since it sounds like we are indeed trying to chart a course for our traveling band. Who is excited to do that? To roll chart a course? I see a hand up. Liriel, do you want to take it away?
I'll try it.
When you chart a course for your traveling band, tell a story of the journey and roll plus keen. So we get a story to start, and then a roll to see how this charting of a course goes.
So a story of the journey thus far. Or
it can be any sort of any story from your journey, right? So it can include the journey out. It can include just the adventure, right, of delivering the crown of light, or any other kind of aspect of the journey you want to discuss. And there are prompts for this. I should mention there's a tab with story prompts that you can draw from.
Okay, well, let me look at this just. And also there's story, there's playbook stories, right?
That's correct. Yeah, if you want to go with one of those, that's also awesome.
I'll just look at these to familiarize them. Well, at least we won't be tempted to stay here too long. Do you remember it? I wish those purple fruits had lasted longer. They were so good. How strange, wasn't it, to find that little oasis of happiness in the middle of that arid nothing. I mean, for all that we knew, according to the map, that there was an oasis there, it didn't seem real, did it? Until we found it, and then bathing and dousing each other with water and picking those amazing purple fruits and drying what we could. And I still have one. Does anyone want it? Last one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, those things were way too rich for me. It took me a couple of days to get over that. Like that did not go well.
Mm. Well, I'm sorry about that, but I'm not sure that we could have made it without these.
Belby hold out a hand for the last of the fruit from you, but then after taking it, kind of thinks a little better and like breaks it in half and offers you half of it back again to share.
I gladly share, and thank you. So nothing wholesome here, nothing nutritious here, or I dare say even worth bothering with, I hope. Once we're through here, then the desert, then we're supposed to be done with the desert. And all the gods send that it be so, because I have had enough of dryness.
Yeah, and with that, sharing a bite of this last dried piece of the purple fruit, and trying to chart a course, to greener pastures, as it were. Let's see a roll plus you get to add your keen here, I believe.
My keen is 1, I think.
There we go. 9 plus 1. That's a 10.
Is a 10. I see the shadow of water down there, just about 2 points to the left of the sun. If we go down there, there should be something, and we can leave this place behind.
Perfect. Yeah. So we're gonna be able to mark the journey path. The only thing is, yes. On a 10 plus, you come on any obstacles from a position of strength and confidence. Belby, as your fearless leader, is forging ahead. What sense of yours kind of tingles so that you kind of know from far out that a greater crow is circling?
Hmm. I think it's partly that there's, a like jeweled dagger, and I'm trying so hard not to look at it that I'm like trying to look everywhere else. And that's when I spot, that telltale shadow in the distance.
Yeah, still high up, still kind of like slowly tightening the circle it's flying as the kind of jet black of a greater crow up in the sky. These carrion birds have grown fat from feasting. And for folk like you, a greater crow is easily the size of all three of you put together. What do you do? Do you let your companions know you spotted that telltale shape?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I point out, the danger, and I say, let's not fight one more thing today, and I point to the abandoned armor of what must have been, like, even relative to us, a giant, and say, I don't think it will spot us if we all hide in that breastplate.
God, well, there's certainly no other cover here. God send that's not too hot, and will roast us alive before the crow even gets us. But I cannot think of a better answer. Can you, Harding?
I don't see that there's anything else out here to hide under. Although, yeah, I don't relish having to hide under that thing in the heat of the sun. But it's all we have.
Lead on, Belby, and let us make our way into that thing's shadow, and hope the bird is well fed from previous grisly remains.
All right, Belby, what do you do?
Well, so I think, I'm going to motion my companions into the shadow of this breastplate. I'm wondering whether I'm triggering hide or negotiate an obstacle, Alexi.
Yeah, so hide is one of the peril moves when things are getting dicey. Kind of the good roll on part of course means you come on any obstacle from a position of strength. So I'm up to have you simply kind of negotiate an obstacle here, right? Because you're actually you're not in imminent danger. You're just taking all precautions here to make sure you're not ever spotted by the crow.
All right, then I think I'm going to roll plus keen.
All right, roll plus keen to negotiate an obstacle.
It's really a clever thing to figure out.
All right, that's a 10 here.
On a 10 plus, you solved this problem handily. You may remember and name one of your burdens, as you recall how you've grown from the last time you faced such an obstacle. Yeah, so you have a burden with you, as do some of your companions, but it's as yet unnamed. So you have the chance here to remember and name your burden. Am I coming through all right? Was I? Okay, good. Yeah. So Belby, tell us a little bit about that. You are muted, however.
We hear those horrible wing beats, and maybe, thankfully, at least a little distance from us, it's horrible caw noise. And, this really brings me back to a different moment when I was hiding from pursuit. And, one of the friends we made along the journey, was there with me, but there was just a small place to hide, behind. I'd really shimmied up on top of a rafter and, pressed myself into the corner of the roof. But there wasn't enough space for two people, and certainly not for a big person at all. So, I'm remembering when I was hiding, and, the man, down on the ground, saw what was coming for him and tossed up to me a he broke the chain on his necklace, and tossed up to me the locket he had that was, relatively expensive, and asked me to return it to his wife. And I still have it.
I see. So that's a story of the journey, showing how you've grown from the last time you faced such an obstacle. Are you saying your burden here is the locket that must be returned?
Yes.
Interesting. All right. Well, you lead your companions, into the shade and cover of this breastplate, and though the smell is not pleasant, the shade is actually cool, right? It is surprisingly provides surprisingly kind of comfortable cover, and you hear the sound of those wing beats coming lower, and then you hear the crow gorging itself on something else of the battlefield, and then it caws in dismay. And if you peek out a moment, you see that the thorns growing over the battlefield have shifted and pricked the bird, and it is being driven off by these thorns that seem protective of the field they're growing over. But the three of you were able to safely hide, and when the danger passes, you're able to press forward. Do you do so?
It's press forward or perish. We can't stay here.
Absolutely. As you kind of move past the edge of the Steelstone field, what the next kind of significant landmark to come into view is the Great Sapphire Bridge. Leah, what shows what makes it obvious that this bridge was built for far larger beings than you and your two companions here?
Well, I think it's the fact that we have to, use a rope and a little grapple to get up each step leading to the bridge's arc. I think we make camp halfway up the stairs, for one night before continuing.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And looking at the enormous wheel ruts to either side of the staircase, and trying to imagine the size of whatever engine or infernal device that could have ever spanned such a thing.
Yeah. Harding, why is it called the Great Sapphire Bridge? Is that just the color of the material? Is it made of literal sapphire? Are there like gemstones inset, in some kind of inscrutable pattern all along the sides of the bridge?
I think I think you have there's a sort of a bluish sapphire tint to the stone that the bridge was built of. It doesn't contain any sapphire at all. It's just for some reason that stone has that particular tint to it. And when the setting sun hits it just right, like the crystal inside the stone just sort of gives off that a sort of a light bluish halo as you're looking at the sun through the bridge's like structure, the superstructure, and it kind of gives it that sort of jewelish glow. And that's kind of, I think that's how it ended up with that name.
That makes sense to me. And indeed, you are kind of like grappling your way up one of these kind of gargantuan steps as the sun is starting to set, right? And you get this this kind of bluish halo lighting up you and your companions. As the sunset goes purple, you and your companions are kind of haloed in sapphire here. Who wants to roll to chart a course across the bridge?
Let's see. I'll give it a shot this time. So now I'm not sure what would prompt everyone else to pay attention to Harding, but I think
how do you kind of like take are you like volunteering explicitly, or you're just like pushing ahead like you were doing before, where you were kind of sometimes wandering ahead of the rest of the fellowship?
I think he sort of is just sort of poking ahead, like he's like scrambling up, because I think he is I think because his sister was so adventurous and he was a tag along, like he and his sister had traveled outside of the swamp to like the neighboring hills and like the coastal cliffs that came close to where the swamp is. And so he's kind of got a little bit of experience actually climbing structures, like this. So like he's just sort of like almost like as a nervous twitch sort of habit, like he's like getting a little bit ahead, looking up, looking around, partly for paranoid reasons, like he's worried that we're exposed, because there's really nowhere to hide on this bridge. Like there's nothing to get under, there's nothing to get behind. We're just like, each step is a step. Like we might be able to construct something to hide us, but the way this bridge does, especially right about sunset, there's no way for us to actually hide. So he's just sort of looking up, looking around, trying to make sure that there's we aren't climbing right into the mouth of something that's set up shop on this bridge ahead of us. So I think it's almost by accident that he ends up doing this. Like he ends up actually like looking ahead and like making this roll.
Well, Liriel,
go ahead.
And Liriel feels strange on the bridge, and that I'll save that for a story.
The way you've described what you're doing, Harding, makes me think you might actually be triggering gaze into the distance first and then chart a course.
I can do that.
So when you gaze into the distance, describe what fragment of loveliness in the landscape has caught your eye, and then remember and name one of your burdens.
Oh, that would be good. I think as Harding sort of crests like probably the next step up, and like maybe like 2-3 steps up from where we are, is where the steps start to shorten up a little bit to the top, so they get a little bit easier to get over. And Harding like just sort of sits down and looks out, like down the chasm, which is like a canyon where there's a deep cut river way far below us, and we just came out of that sort of wasteland of a battlefield, but ahead, if you look far enough away, you start to see like the tops of a great and old forest. And Harding is remembering when they came through that forest the first time, and his sister was with them, and they took turns climbing the trees, because we were the only experienced climbers, and like looking and trying to and figuring out like which way we needed to go to avoid the next like grouping of bandits or hunters or whatever else might be troubling us, to get through the forest so that we could make it to the next outpost that we needed to get to. And they had kind of almost made it into a competition, and they would each try to bring back like something interesting from the tops of whatever tree they had climbed to, and come up with some sort of like stupid little story about what they found in the top of that tree, and what this little bit of nut or pine cone or whatever it happened, or like bit of old bird nest or whatever it happened to be that they found. And they would sort of make it like a contest of coming up with some ridiculously outlandish story. Like every time they came back to camp after that. And he remembers
fantastic.
The last time, the last time he won, it was with a broken bit of bird egg shell that he had found in an old nest, and he had come up with some long and drawn out like dragon egg story about it.
Oh, fantastic! And what burden are you? What's the name you're giving to one of your burdens from this recollection of adventuring with your sister, in happier times?
Whew, I think this burden will be like this is okay. I think I've got one that fits. I think the burden is his sister's laugh.
Yeah.
She had like a ridiculously just raucous belly laugh over that dragon egg story. And it was characteristic of her. Like if you knew her, like you would immediately say, I can hear how she laughed at that right now. And he's carrying that back because that's one of the stories that he thinks he needs to tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, for me that works as gaze into the distance and a story of the journey. So go ahead and roll plus keen at this point.
Okay. Let's see. My keen is 1. So let me go to our Dice with Friends site and see how this goes.
Yeah, we're a pretty keen party.
No, not so much. It goes badly. That's a total of a 5.
On a miss, you're neck deep in dire difficulty. Perhaps the hunters are even on your tail. Well, I think there's no other way to do this, right? I think like as you're remembering this, you hear that laugh again, right? That raucous laugh, and it's like coming up like from under the bridge, and like as like there's a flash of hope. You see first like one hand, then another hand, then another hand. Reaching up over the side of the bridge, right? Right around that step where you are.
And each the hand is like from some different species or different person. Like one hand has freckles, another hand has like dark skin, another hand is like is big and green. Like
yeah, absolutely, yeah. But like the 3 hands reach up, and you know what's coming. And perhaps we'll take a brief break there. Let's take 10, and when we come back at like 5 past the hour, we will see what happens when the hunters make an appearance here. All right, see you all then.
All right.
All right. Hello, hello. Looks like we are back. So when we left off, Harding was attempting to chart a course, but the laugh of his sister rang out, and the hands of the hunters started appearing, kind of at the edge of the bridge, like something is pulling itself up from over the side. Harding, you're a few steps past your companions, who are still trying to climb up one of these earlier kind of gargantuan steps of the Sapphire Bridge. You certainly know what that laugh and what those hands portend, even if for a moment you had hoped something else. Let me ask you, what do you do? You're muted, I'm afraid.
Might this trigger my playbook move, Laden with Doom?
Oh, it certainly might. Can you tell us a little about that?
The Laden with Doom move states that when the hunters or another terrible peril approach, you may tell a story of the journey that explains your terror, and roll plus keen. Yeah. And then the result, the results might come into play a little bit later, but
we're already all part of the story.
Yeah, it sounds like it would fit to me, unless one of the other basic moves fits a little bit better. But
no, I think this is exactly the time to try and trigger that. See if you end up getting an advantage on trying to.
Okay.
Approaching threat.
Okay, so I think I'm going to take just a quick look at the journey stories of the journey prompts and see if any of those kind of fit.
Yeah.
Well, the story of what happened to your sister.
That's a really good one.
Because that's whose voice here.
Yeah, so that would be the one of how I lost one of my charges, which I guess, even though I was more her charge than she mine, I think it fits.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that laugh. I think as his sister basically the big hero moment for I think for his sister was I think she had to place that crown of light on the true heir's head. Like somebody else had to do it. He couldn't take the crown, or they couldn't take the crown for themselves. It had to be given to them, and the bestowing of the crown itself basically required that the person who bestowed the crown, basically it was lit with their last breath. It's that sort of thing. So, and I think the last thing that Harding heard from his sister as she placed that crown was as she smiled, and then she gave that laugh at the end to show that basically that this was how she had chosen to end her fight, and by ending it to win it. And hearing that laugh again and then seeing those hands is just it poisons that memory, even with it poisons that memory. It plays on that burden that he was already carrying about having to tell the story of all of the times that he heard that laugh, and it just it's the kind of stuff that they broke, that they used to break him. I think in the original captivity was this sort of thing, like basically taking something that should have been a boon and a balm, just and it being poisoned and tainted. So was that? Are we at the point where I can make the keen roll again, and let's see if it goes any better this time?
I think so. Yeah, let's go ahead. We've got our story. Let's make our roll.
Okay, it's a dice plus 1. Hey, it's a 7 this time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, on a hit, you offer insight that gives everyone in the fellowship advantage on evading the danger. So something you're able to say here, right, from your own kind of doom-laden memories is going to give advantage to your fellows. On a 7 through 9, you take a named burden as you recall being in the Doomslord's grip. So that's in addition to the burdens you have. So you will now have 2 unnamed burdens and 2 named burdens.
Okay, so I'm adding a 4th burden to my burden list. Okay.
Right. You do get to name it as you do.
Okay, so let's see. Ooh. All right, for the named burden here, I'm going to say that it is ooh. I think the named burden is that this vision because he and his sister had been in captivity. Like these things, the hunters can use those voices, and I think like they can also they can't directly mimic the appearance maybe because our thing is they take the voices, right? But the hands can mimic like a quality. And so I think one of them is just one of them is like just and the hands are just close enough to like put him in mind of one of the many times his sister had basically pulled him out of danger, and this new burden is just another one of those stories that it's brought back to the forefront of his mind. And I think it's another I think the burden is always being rescued.
Oh, that's great. Can I add something here?
Sure.
Yeah, so I think you see like one of these hands that like looks like your sister's hand is now beckoning you, right? Like now making like a gesture, and the voice that sounds so much like it could be hers is saying, come brother, if you come and reignite the crown of shadows, we can be together again. It's the only way. I need you this time.
Oh, that tears at him, and I think as he's scrambling back, like from the edge of the bridge where these hands are like reaching up and where the voice is coming from, I think he shrieks in this sort of like in this high pitched shriek, which his companions will recognize as danger, Will Robinson. Like that's his signal. This high pitched shriek of absolute horror. And right after that is get away from the edge, all right. That lets them know that they can get away. If they can move toward the middle of the bridge, they might be able to avoid the grasping hands.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got early warning from Harding, who's the secret signal that something is wrong is that high-pitched shriek. No, but that totally makes sense. You guys will get advantage on making rolls to escape this danger, which would mean you can roll 3 dice and take the 2 that you want. So it gives you just that bonus. Liriel, what do you do as you hear this kind of emphatic warning from Harding as he comes scrambling back?
I am Harding seems to be panicked, and I trust Belby to if necessary, to take care of themselves. And my eyes dart to find some place on this vast thing that could possibly be a hiding spot, and there's only one, which is the giant wheel well that is to the side of the step. Seen from above, there's no place to hide, but the scale of these steps and this wheel rut are so large, and we are so small in comparison, that there's just barely enough space that we can conceal ourselves for long enough that we might be able to creep away. And so I'm going to seize him and try to propel him towards this hiding spot, and while I frantically motion and hope Belby sees.
Okay, yeah. So Liriel is trying to hide and grabbing Harding as she does so. Liriel, I'd like you to roll plus keen to hide in this gargantuan wheel rut.
And I have advantage, yes?
Yeah, so go ahead and roll 3d6 in our dice roller.
So I'm rolling 3d6, keep 2, add 1. And I have an 8.
Okay, nice. Let me checking out our basic moves here. On a 7 to 9, someone else is already in your hiding spot. This is great. Yeah, so you grab Harding, you go down into the wheel well, and unseen by you before you had gone to hide in there. There appears to be a small family of like refugees gathered there. They're bigger than you, but they're like crouched way down, wearing like ragged clothing, and they're like staring at you in fear as you also are suddenly with them in this hiding spot. Belby, what do you do?
Well, we had, the specified signal for danger, which is a high panic shriek, which we chose out of convenience as the signal for danger. So I'm hightailing it out of here. I figure we're all going to take off running across the bridge.
This is interesting. Run really kind of leans on you having companions to like grab and bring with you. Are you going to try and protect your fellow adventurers as you make your run?
I kind of think Belby interprets the shriek as and the get away from the edges. Let's all book it, and then if this is working, it's going to notice partway across.
Well, I
that
don't
was
have
not
a
the
problem
plan.
with this, with Belby working for everyone, because we didn't expect anyone to be in the hiding spot, and it's not a big hiding spot. So I think we've been balls.
You guys might be coming
at hiding, and so yeah. So when Belby says run, that's all that there is at this point, which is to run for our lives.
Yeah, well, the run might end up working out for more folks than just you, because on a 10+, you've taken everyone with you, which could include these refugees if you're willing to help them out.
I'm willing to help them by all running at the same time.
All right, Belby, you're gonna roll plus swift. Who's the person you're most invested in bringing along?
I think it's Harding, because Harding gave the warning.
All right, and I think you get advantage on this too, because of how Harding's move works, right? Yeah, everyone in the Fellowship gets advantage on evading the danger.
I agree. Boom!
13.
It's a 12. It's a 12 because I'm only taking 2 of the dice. But My Swift is +1. So.
That's awesome.
So
how do you do this? How do you manage to not only, save your own hide, but bring along this whole group with you, leaving the hunters behind?
Yeah. So you know what? I think let me know if I can snowball these moves together. In telling the story of why this run works, can I use something of a collector?
When you could really use a small piece of gear, tell a story of the journey, and roll plus keen. All right.
All right. So, I'm going to say that as I start running, then I see that there's all these people suddenly like coming out of this rut where I didn't know there was anyone. I'm flabbergasted, and I try and quickly like rummage through my pockets looking for the one thing I need, and let's see. I'm glancing through these options. Let's go with. Okay, I'll take this one. So when we'd been a long way on the journey, we were staying in the barn of an inn, and it was dingy, it was full of hay, and not always well mucked out hay. And I just wanted more than anything a bath, so I snuck into the part of the inn for higher paying customers and was in the midst of stealing soap. And I got caught, and I was kind of playing off and wound up performing in the inn itself, some of the songs from our home. And one of the songs I sang, was one of those stories of, the girl back home, who's waiting during a war for her, beloved to come back. And I sang all the verses but the last verse. And it's one of those, you can spin it out a while. It's a drinking song, right? So it's like all the detailing in the different verses of like the signs by which she'll know him, detailing his armor and the plume on his hat and the sword by his side and the horse, alongside him. It's a horse he's astride. And so I sang all the verses up to the one where, he is coming up down the hill to her. And I left off the verse where he's one of those horrible battle crows in his armor. People never sing that song to children with the last verse, and big people are kind of children in how possessive they are of objects, and in many other respects, I suppose. So I just left that last verse off, but it means I do have this like relatively bedraggled at this point, like bit of soap and a few like unguents that I picked up from the fancy part of the inn and didn't pay for with my song. And I'm actually just spilling all that slippery oil over the bridge.
So as to make the bridge more slippery?
Behind us, yes.
I see. So that's it's a like cover your tracks move to cause things to slip up if they're trying to follow you.
Yep.
Roll plus keen.
All right. That's an 8.
So you've got the thing. Yes, absolutely. But there's been a misunderstanding of some sort. Surely nothing that couldn't be cleared up. But the original owner believes you stole the item and has ways to cause problems for you. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. But you're elaborating on a previous major success here. So you're definitely getting people away. So give me just a little bit of that. Because you are able to lead the charge and bring not only your companions but these refugees hiding in the rut as well across the bridge to safety. It sounds like. Yeah,
I think we're all tearing across, kind of helping people up. But I was already starting on this spoil our trail plan before I realized quite how many people were coming. So I'm already pouring this slippery liquid onto the bridge, and that means the last of the children with the refugees is kind of slippery, and I have to reach out and like give them a hard like pull to get them, keep them on the bridge, and then we all just take off.
Okay, yeah. So we see we kind of get like a thing overhead, so that we see this bridge, and we see like we see the kind of like earlier parts of the bridge suddenly just like crawling with hard to define shapes, but there are so many hands, but they're kind of slipping and tripping over each other as they try to like pour into the rut and follow after you. And so on the far side of the bridge, we see Belby and Liriel and Harding and this new family suddenly kind of emerging, right, stepping off of the bridge, kind of panting, catching their breath as you've reached a kind of wooded area. There are kind of towering trees all around, but there's a kind of homey smoke rising from not too far away. It seems like you can kind of glimpse a little bit through the trees what looks like an inn in the distance. Liriel, what do you do? You've had a close one, and you've suddenly acquired a bit of a new flock.
Well, brief introductions to these people, and ask them their name or their family name.
The woman that seems to be the one that everyone looks to. It's unclear. These may be folks from a number of different families. Hard to tell, but the kind of oldest and seemingly most in charge of this ragtag group introduced herself as Malva.
Malva, you and yours are welcome to travel with us until we reach a parting of the ways. We're trying to get home.
Where's home?
Home is is on the other side of this forest, and through a pass of mountains, and then across a great deal of open land until the place where the river, where the third great river deltas. It's pretty much, well, it seems like it's on the other side of the world.
Home for us was nestled in the green rolling hills of Camiran, but it was laid waste by those armies that spoke with the voices of ghosts.
There are are you all farmers by trade?
There's some chatter amongst them, and people were apprentices for various crafts, and it sounds like the people of the hills did a lot of shepherding, tending to flocks.
There are there are pasture lands that I know of. Once we get through the mountains, there are pasture lands in abundance to the south, where I'm sure that people would have need of those who can who understand tending sheep. And of course, assuming Tarziel is still intact, that great trade city, which we can find by following the second great river down south once we get to the other side of the woods here, is a place where anyone who's willing to work can find work. But it's in such a way, so I can't say for sure which of these places are still safe and which traversal is valid, but you're welcome to share the road with us until we
so here's what I propose. I think these people are understandably uncertain and confused, and there's some some kind of fast murmuring in a language different from the common language you share, as some of them are talking amongst themselves, and I think to kind of to calm them and to be able to sort of to help them, you might need to negotiate an obstacle here, and plausibly you're rolling with true if it's about just like forging a human connection with these newcomers and making them believe and understand that your intentions are good and that you are indeed the best guy you can on how to find a new place to call home.
Can I use Rally the Flock?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, when you share a poem or parable to raise your companion's spirits. That's
what I was going to suggest.
Makes sense to me. Sure, and your companions can be listening in as you as you do this. Yeah, tell me one more thing about that. Is there a particular poem or parable that plays into your message?
Yes, absolutely. The parable that I'm going to tell is of the of a student who asked his master what the best way to get somewhere was. And the master says, "Oh, I can tell you that. Just take one step."
I like it. Go ahead and roll with true.
Bang.
Look at that. That's a 12. Yeah. Okay. On a 10 plus, so yeah, on a hit, everyone listening can clear a named burden, and the first companion take heart and sally forth rolls with advantage. So yeah. So I think firstly we do see these refugees kind of soften, right? We see Malva like address them. She says something. She said maybe she even is kind of repeating your parable in their language, just so that if they miss the nuance of listening to a language that's not their native tongue, they get it, and you see them all nodding, and they straighten up. They're ready to set forth. They believe that you're able to show them the way. But for each of our companions here, you get to clear a named burden. Belby, tell me how the words that Liriel has shared here are able to lift something that you're carrying.
Yeah, I think that's that discussion of just taking the single first step. And as we talk to these refugees about where they'll go next, they're likely to pass closer to the city where the lady who ought to have this locket is. And Belby kind of thinks it over and then goes to the child that she kind of pulled from the bridge and entrusts this task to the child. Arguably not the best plan, but this wasn't a story about accomplishing something totally by yourself in one move. It's about taking one step closer to your goal. I think there's kind of a moment where Belby is talking to this small child who has so little, and this is a costly locket, but in their time together at this inn, Belby is telling the child that they have something more than just the locket. Like, they have an important job that no one else can do, because they're the one Belby has picked to do it. And so it's up to this child to at least take this locket one step forward and find someone to trust with it, the way Belby is trusting little, I'm just picking one of the names, little Waldrada.
Waldrada. So young Waldrada clutches the locket to her and like nods very earnestly that she will find the the woman whose picture is inside the locket and convey this to her. Wonderful. So we have kind of all together come to the inn. Just making sure I'm clear on that. Cool. All right. So perfect. That makes for a good place to have this sort of a conversation. Let me ask you, Harding. How do we see you taking in this parable that Liriel has shared, and how does it lift something from lift a weight from your shoulders?
I think he's going to clear the always being rescued burden, because I think he's taking this lesson that like him basically giving the warning, like he's sort of like rehashing the scenario that led them to the inn, and he the way his head is working, he's thinking, well, if I hadn't let them know in time, we wouldn't have been able to get everybody away. So he's starting to work through, and it's like, everybody is a step. Every person on the team, every person in the group is part of the solution. Like each contributes what they can to, and he contributed a horrible shrill shriek of warning, and that was his contribution. And without that, they could have all been overrun by the many-handed ghost speakers, or whatever we're going to call them. They could have caught us there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in his head, he's like, I am contributing something. I did contribute something. It was just a little step. It was a small step. It was one little part, but it's not, I'm basically not just, being carried around in this, carried around in the group in a sack. Like I'm part of it.
Yeah.
I'm contributing something. I'm not just always
You can
being
clear
rescued.
that burden. Yeah, so I think something we see, presumably this group now, these you three companions and your the kind of ragtag group you've caught up with are gathered in one of the common areas of the inn. I think we see like the innkeeper looking over this group, and then like a man that looks to be his twin, like approaching and like whispering in his ear, and he like holds out a piece of parchment, and like the brothers are like both looking at the parchment, holding it up, and they seem to be looking right over at you, Belby, as if they're comparing you to something on this parchment. What do you do?
Well, this is plausibly, stories of my heroics in the war have spread, I guess, but I'm a modest woman, so my goal is not to trouble people with meeting their heroes, obviously. Let's see. Hi, baby. So can I try and let's see, navigate an obstacle here?
What does that look like? I mean, tell me what you're doing in the fiction, and we'll see if you're navigating an obstacle.
Yeah. So let's see. So these guys are looking over here. I'm, a little perturbed by that. I'm going to go help the innkeeper in the kitchen generously with some novel spices I have that they're likely not to have at a small place like this.
So you're just waltzing right into the kitchen after they've been looking suspiciously at you? Yeah. So like,
not everyone's allowed to be in the kitchen, and not everyone has such interesting spices that are actually pretty expensive for an inn of this quality.
Yeah. So like as you're like headed over towards the kitchen, like one of the innkeepers like steps in your way and says, hold up right there, Missy. Are you this person? And they like turn the parchment around, and it's like warning, soap thief. Do not allow her in your inn. Right? It's clearly something that's been like promulgated among the innkeepers of the region. And there's a crude, sketch of you in the middle of this piece of parchment.
Yeah, and I say, no, I've never had to steal soap in all my life. I usually am given it as a gift by grateful recipients of my wares, and I like display the expensive spices that I have previously stolen.
All right. How do you think what stat do you think is relevant to negotiating this obstacle?
I mean, obviously not true. Let's go with Keen.
All right, make me a roll plus Keen, and we'll see if your spices get you out of hot water.
No, they're really at their best when they're in warmed oil, in fact, to really let their fragrances bloom. Let's see. It's a big hit. It's an 11.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me like what what's the spice that like in particular catches the you know what I can throw this open to the table. Liriel, what's the spice that has been procured by Belby? The innkeepers have never.
It's dragon's breath. It has an odor that is, to say the least, arresting. It is one of the hottest spices around, and prized because like 3 drops spices a pot. It's probably really fatal if you drank it. In an unpleasant way, but in tiny amounts, it's delicious. But it has a eye-watering odor.
Yeah, absolutely. And as it turns out, these twin innkeepers are excited by this. Something they've never gotten to experience before. So they wad up the soap thief poster and let you into the kitchen under supervision to add just the smallest drops of this dragon's breath spice to really make it for a memorable meal.
I think it's the kind of thing that also lets them really stretch whatever they're serving, because like you only want a small amount of whatever's been seasoned with this. So it's very impressive to have eaten, and yet not that pleasant. So the soup goes a lot further than it otherwise would.
Oh, this is fantastic. It sounds like
unless you're a macho diner, in which case it's delicious. More.
It sounds a little like we've kind of like rolled right along into share a meal here.
Yeah.
And it does sound like the person cooking is Belby.
Of course I am. I'm very convivial. So I think I've described what I do to enliven the rations already. And I'm going to roll plus true, which is -1 for me. Right.
Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
It's a 3. The dice accurately understand how this all goes.
Yeah. So we see the whole crew, right, like digging in, and indeed it is a very memorable stew with this extra spice added. But certain the like innkeeper twins have gotten into like a competition amongst themselves to put away the most of this now that it's been spiced this way, and so they're like staring each other down across the table, faces red, eyes like tearing up as they're as they're like giving out like more and more rounds of free drinks to the assembled company, so that they'll be they'll each have their cheering sections as they do this. Unfortunately, when you roll a miss on share a meal, you feast too long and something overtakes you. So I think there's a hard knock on the door, and something about it makes like everyone in the inn go silent. But the door has kind of is kind of shaking from this powerful knock that you've all heard. Let me check. Harding, what do you do?
I think after the story, like Harding was feeling like a little bit, kind of a little bit looser than they had been out on the road. Like we're in like a smidgen of civilization with this inn. And so Harding was sort of letting his guard down. Like he had started to drink a little ale and sample the breads that they were giving out with the soup. They were giving out a lot of like probably bread that was a little stale, but it's great for soaking up this ridiculously overspiced soup.
Sure.
So they were able to kill two birds with one stone. They made the soup stretch and they got rid of a lot of semi-stale bread. Because if you soak it in the soup, it lessens the spice a little bit, and it makes the bread not quite as crusty. But like he was kind of feeling better. He's like, this is going better. I'm not as much of a screw up as I was thinking. I did, and then that knock, and I think like for him, like the sort of rhythm of that knock, like just it just sends like that sort of nightmare chill down his spine, and he straightens up and goes just rigid, and like it doesn't look like he's breathing. Like he's doing such like one of those terrified shallow breaths. Like it's really slow, and you can't see his either his chest or his stomach move out when he takes it. But like you can see his nostrils flaring as he's breathing, but the rest of him is like stone still. Like with one hand on like the mug of ale, and he like looks toward the door slowly, and just almost looks painful to him.
Are you triggering something with this, or is this is just kind of what we see from Harding at the?
Well, I mean, it seems easy, but like this seems like another laden with doom sort of situation. Like there's a terrible peril. It sounds like, and
we don't.
Yeah, that's legit. If you want to go that way, then you can tell a story of the journey that explains your terror and roll plus keen.
Okay.
And remember, you've got those pieces of gear and that gift if they're things you want to weave into your story also. Though not to put any pressure onto the direction of your story, I suppose.
Yeah. I think the sort of rhythm of that knock, sort of it is a thing that sort of brings him back to the crux of I think Harding's role in the story. We've heard before that the crown of light had to be given for its magic to be enabled.
Yeah.
The crown of shadows had to be taken. But it can't be taken from a pedestal. That's not the way it works. It had to be taken from someone. So Harding, during the time when he had been suborned by the enemy, like Harding was the person who originally picked up the crown of shadows so that the Doomlord could take it from him. So for that briefest of moments, like he had held the crown of shadows before it was forcibly taken from him in order to trigger its magic. And that after he had like gotten the crown, and he thought he had gotten away, and was like hiding, and that knock, the rhythm of that knock just sort of like takes him back to when that easy blow of force just opened the door of his little hideaway, and the enemy came and took the crown of shadows from him.
So you weren't working for the Doomlord at that point?
No, he was working, but like in that sort of like he didn't know he was sort of way.
He was like, used by the Doomslord.
Right, like it was sort of like there is this thing that has to be gotten, and he was in this space where. And this is where he had to be rescued by his sister. I think initially was like she got him out of this, like after like, because they were probably, I mean, almost certainly going to kill him, because why would you keep him around after you had gotten what you needed? She rescued him from this, but like that's what's like that knock, just the way that they struck that door is exactly the way that the knock came that opened the door of his little hideout, that where the crown of shadows was taken from him, and he was forcibly captured by the enemy.
Sounds like a story of the journey to me. So go ahead and roll plus keen.
Okay, dice roll +1. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, it's an 11. Yes.
Nice. All right. So this time you don't take an additional burden, but you offer insight that gives everyone in the fellowship advantage on evading the danger. Yeah. What kind of insight do we hear from you, Harding?
I think Harding says that was too many hands. Out the back. And he starts moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Liriel, what do you do?
I say to Malva and hers, "Come on, everyone, we have to leave now." And I look to Belby, and I say, "Get us out of here."
All right. So you're kind of turning to Belby to lead the flight once more.
Yes.
Belby, what do you do?
Well, of my limited options here, I think we're all just going to run, but my way of helping us run here is going to be balancing or just like placing what's left of the spices in their small glass vial right in the path of the door. So when big horrible feet come, tromping in, they should hopefully smash the vial and send up much more of it than we've been using to slow them down.
I see. Just a noxious cloud of this spice to be left as to be left behind you. You think?
Exactly. And
right,
then I'm going to run.
Roll plus keen to run
with advantage.
You get advantage. Yeah, Harding gave you advantage.
That's what. Boxcars. I guess I didn't name who I most wanted to take with me, but who cares? It's everyone, including the really drunk innkeepers.
Oh my goodness! So this increasingly this fellowship, that increases at every point is now barreling through the woods, abandoning the inn, dragging the drunk innkeepers with you, and bringing along the whole group of refugees that.
Yeah, so those innkeepers can't abide leaving their inn. In which case we find out we hear terrible things.
All right. Well, that's a successful run. So I think I think the probably you like run all through the night, and like as the dawn is breaking, you find yourselves leaving the forest and looking up before you at the mountain range and the path through it, which of course is the frozen maw. So this kind of ice rimmed cave opens up, and it's the one way through rather than over the mountains that are here in your path. So why don't we take another 10 and come back at 5 past the hour to wrap up our story, probably with one last piece of this adventure, and then going forward to our epilogue to see how homecoming goes for all of our characters. All right, see you in 10. Hey, welcome back.
Hi.
And Leah, there we go. I see you're there. Hello, hello. So we are at the frozen maw of the earth, and I think the increasingly motley crew that they have brought with them, all looking up at this kind of ice-rimmed cavern leading into the heart of the mountain range. Harding, at, kind of looking at the frozen maw of the earth. What do you fear is trying to escape from the gullet of the mountain? That one was for you, Harding. If you've got an idea there.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think that the reason it's the frozen maw is because one of the great wizards that was arrayed against the Doomlord had basically had to do a spell to counter this great creature of molten earth, like rising from like the deepest parts of the core of the world. And in order to do that, like they created this perpetual loop of just of the sort of icy cold of the void, that's just funneled back, that's just continually feeding itself into this cavern, so that every time this creature of molten earth tries to rise, more of that icy cold confronts it. And so, like, this from the outside, it's the frozen maw. But if you ever got too far down, you would find this horrendous giant of molten stone trying to claw its way up, and reclaim the surface for the lords of the molten core.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. I love this. Yeah. So like you can hear the great gusts of that icy cold wind that blows out of the mountain, blows round the mountain range, and blows back in, creating this ever flowing cycle. And the big people with you, look up, and their shawls and hair and cloaks flutter in this wind, and Malva turns to you, Liriel, and says, "The great city and the pasture lands you spoke of, they're on the other side of this mountain range. We have to pass through here."
Yes. Liriel pauses for a moment as high up on the cliff of the mountain face that they're looking at, where the sun has warmed the ice just a little bit, there are some icicles, and from one of them drips a small, tiny, clear drop of water.
Are you gazing into the distance?
And as she sees that, then she lowers her gaze to her robe, upon which you can see, perhaps it's more accurate to say that you could have seen a long time ago, back when she first set out on her journey, a painting of the third great river as it goes down into the sea, and which is now just faded outlines. And where the river's banks were, there are little stitches that have been put into the garment, little stitches by hand, having that most of which seem to have nothing to do with the repairs that have been necessary in order to keep the cloak in one piece, but just seem to have been put in there by hand, and her fingers trace along some of those stitches, and she remembers the river. And she remembers what the stitches mean. And the name of the burden is Too Many Deaths.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say that since the woods behind you seem quiet, there doesn't seem to be anything right on your tail. If you want to make camp and share a meal before entering the frozen maw, that sounds plausible to me.
I think so. I think this is too difficult a journey to undertake, except well fed and well ready.
Absolutely.
And our rations are long and hard used at this point. But I will tell a story. And I will, every stitch on my cloak here is a person. That I came into contact with during this journey long enough to know their name. And for every one of them, I put a stitch, and you can see here that I've had the opportunity to add you, Malva, and the others that came with you here on the sleeve. And everyone that perished, I've cut the stitch. And I show one sleeve, which is nothing but cut stitches. Where you can see the holes where the stitches were, and bits of thread that remain there.
Right.
If I make it home, I will hang this by my hearth to remember the journey, sure, but to remember the names of everyone. Where I come from, the trade I come from originally is one where we remember much of the history by reciting. And I can still recite the names of everyone that made it here on this garment. And if I have anything to do about it, I won't cut any further stitches from this. Because there have been enough deaths.
So a simple meal enlivened by a powerful story. And I think Malva like reaches out and like traces a hand over some of the stitch work you're showing her along the faded river and your much mended cloak. Roll plus true for the sharing of a meal amongst this fellowship.
And I point to the youngest and I say, "See here, this is where my home is, and I hope to make it." And that is a 10.
Wonderful. On a hit, peace and fellowship reign at your table. On a 10 plus, each partaker may tell a story of home to clear a named burden. So, Belby, you don't have any burdens left. You're traveling light. Do you tell a story regardless, or just enjoy the meal?
I'll let the other guys go first, as they have burdens to clear, and then decide.
Harding, do you tell a story of home as you partake of a simple meal to fortify the fellowship before entering the frozen maw?
I think so. The only burden I have that's named currently is his sister's laugh, and I think he's going to tell a story of his sister's heroism during the conflict, and it's going to be a story of a daring escape from a squad of hunters, as she basically led the hunters away from the rest of the group, and basically led them into a deadfall. A deadfall trap that basically, it didn't hurt them, but it did keep them busy for long enough for her to circle back and for the rest of the fellowship to escape. And I leave them with the end of the story with her laugh booming out over the hunters who had fallen into the deadfall trap, as she basically scrambled off through the trees.
What was her name?
Ooh, now you would ask that. I hadn't named her yet. I think Harding's sister's name was Beryl, spelled like the jewel, and the locket he can't take off has that name scrawled across it. And the reason that nobody has recognized that name yet is because it's scrawled across there in the writing of the Doomlord.
He's wearing a locket with Beryl's name, but in like the Doomslord's strange,
the Doom script or whatever we want to call that. And that was the link they used to try and use tormenting him against Beryl. And it still clings to him. He still can't get it off. Like that, he can't remove it. It's still there, but it's while that thing still persists, like right now it's more of a memory of something of that person he's lost. Instead of being an instrument of torment, it's now an instrument of remembrance. So.
But you are able, by telling this story of her heroism and surely delighting the children of Malva's party, to clear that burden. So something lifts from you there.
Yeah, and I think it's as he describes, his sister laughing as she basically ran off from the deadfall trap, and I think all of the children in the group just sort of take up this laugh, and they start a little children's version of that big booming laugh. That sort of, if you ever heard a child like toddler to maybe 6 or 7 try to fake a big laugh, because they don't have big laughs at that point. They just have like little kid laughs, but all of them try to fake her big laugh, and it just sort of lifts his spirits enough to where that is no longer a burden to carry, but it's a boon to be shared.
Oh, that's wonderful. Liriel, do you tell the story of home? I mean, I guess in some ways you have, haven't you, by pointing out your home?
I have to tell a story of home. And at the end of the meal, you see Liriel putting in another stitch. And then reciting, and the recitation ends, and Malva and Corlax and Durden, and Harding and Beryl, as I point to the very last one.
Yeah, I love it. May all go home who can, may all be remembered who can't. Belby, what are you thinking now?
I think when the embers are low and it's like time for the children to go to bed, there's been kind of a mix of stories told. And, some of them are clearly dwelling on some of the stories maybe that they haven't told from their own journey and the hardships they've been through. So Belby tells the story of her great heroism and how shortly after they'd left their home, she came across just a incredibly fearsome beast. And I'm going to pause it at this point because we haven't said like how big the big people are. I'm going to say like at least twice as high. And so she met this like horrible creature after leaving home for the first time, like a creature whose very footfalls sparks from the ground, that's like its legs all bent in different ways. It had a great like swirling whip. And then, from its breath, like just like fogs and, the strong winds of this like wild rolling eyes and gnashing teeth, and that like keeps like becoming a story of how Belby was, trying to sneak under this creature because it was so monstrous and so large in order to get at, one of the small bags dangling off its edge. And the creature is a horse, right? Like, and this is like this story where the kids get more and more invested in it until they get to the punchline of it being a horse. And some of them have seen horses before, right? And so, this is the story of, discovering how little they are compared to the world beyond home. But for the refugees listening at the table at the fire, it's kind of a moment of thinking how big they are, and that what frightened the impressive Belby is something they aren't afraid of, and maybe they're ready to make the next step on their journey.
Speaking of the next step on the journey, who would like to chart a course as we attempt to navigate the frozen maw?
I think it's Belby's turn to chart a course.
Yep.
Belby, are you up to chart the course forward here?
Sure, Belby's in a pretty good mood. So let's see. I'm just rereading the move again. I think this is a place where people do pass through, and let's see. Yeah, I think passing through, this icy place, reminds me of something we're missing in the meantime, which is that, we traveled setting out maybe in the fall, which means we weren't home when it was winter. And there's something that's just so, when we were very cold on the journey, it was a very different kind of cold than we had at home. Because when you're cold at home, you're at home and you tuck yourself up and you make cocoa. And then best of all, on the first snowfall at home, when the marshes kind of start to freeze over and the boats can't get through, if it's a really cold winter, every day it gets colder, you get more excited. Because if the swamp actually freezes, which only happens every couple of years, there's an enormous ice skating festival. And there was a day that was so cold, and there was just a moment we were all together on the journey, like thinking about how like in the midst of the cold, we felt excited because maybe this meant ice skating. And then remembering it was freezing where we were, and it wasn't unusual, and it wasn't exciting for anyone else on this adventure. And we might not ice skate ever again if we don't get home, but we're getting close. So I'm excited, and I think we'll make our way through. Roland plus Keen.
Yeah, roll plus Keen.
All right, so that is a 10.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, well, in the interest of time, I think what that means is that you are going to successfully navigate under the mountain through the frozen maw of the earth. I guess tell me Harding about like the close call with the molten creature trying to escape from the ice, and how you very successfully make your way past it, or manage to stay beneath its notice.
I think basically there's a stretch as you're going through these passes and negotiating through these short tunnels that we're having to get through. There is a bridge that's basically made of ice, and in order to make our way past that, and down below, like you could see the glow as the molten giant is trying to rise up, and then the cold sort of starts to harden it, and so it sinks back down into its comfort zone of warmth and pressure. But so you would see that
moment of the companions almost like skating across this ice bridge, as they're like moving quickly to avoid the attention of the molten creature below.
Yeah, and the glow sort of pulses, like as it gets closer, like it rises up and it starts to brighten and shine from underneath, like you're standing over the top of a sun, and then it subsides slowly again, like that sun is setting. And maybe that happened like once or twice as we're making our way across this big open canyon that we're having to cross. And it looked really, really beautiful, but it was also super nerve-wracking.
Sure, absolutely. And we know there are great plains to cross still, and the great city of Tarzal, the center of trade, and there are perils and tribulations along me that we would get to see if we were playing 2 sessions back again from the Broken Land. But for tonight, we're going to turn to our epilogues. And these epilogues can both represent the homecoming of our characters, and since you've picked up these other companions along the way, they can be part of your like parting words to them too, if you want to roll that into how these epilogues play out. So I'm going to have each of you turn to the epilogue sheet here. Because when you reach home, each player narrates a short epilogue for their character. It can take place in a single scene or as a montage. Everyone incorporates one story of growth into their epilogue, and you can look and see the prompts for the stories of growth. If you've cleared all your burden, you may incorporate a second story of growth. For every named burden you're still carrying, you must add an element from the stories of amends. I don't think we have any named burdens left, though. And for every unnamed burden you have, you must add an element from the stories of isolation. So if I'm reading this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Liriel, you'll be telling us a story of growth and a story of isolation as part of this epilogue. How do you feel about starting us off?
Sure. Liriel comes home, and as she said, she hangs up her cloak, and every night that she recites to herself the names of everyone that's there. but that's her own personal history. She also has to contribute something to the world in order for this incredible journey of going out and finding what she can and coming back to be meaningful, to make sense. And so after long thought, she decides that she will that there needs to be a new verse added to the year song, which is the song that is sung by everyone at the end of the year, when the season turns, winter turns into spring. That is the most important thing that's done in the whole culture, because only by singing songs at the end of the year are they kept true. It's possible that anything else might be forgotten, and in being forgotten, it would no longer be so after a while, after enough people had died, that it wasn't in anyone's memory. But by being sung and by being reenacted and such, then it's remembered forever. And it's a momentous occasion to add a new verse to the year song, because it's a long song. And so only the most extraordinary things can add new verses, but the war qualifies. And it's not a happy verse. It is. It's a song about death. There were certainly stories of hope and such that came out of the war, but that's not what it was about. And so she sings a song, and it goes something like, I'll sing a little bit of it. It goes, on a pale charger, a rider will ride, roses and whispering close by her side. Perfection got lost and we'll never know why. So let this be the moment we die. We die. Let this be the moment we die. And late that night, somebody might see that she has a small stack of books, and she is looking through them one last time and then feeding them into the fire. And someone there asks, why are you doing this to such precious things? She goes, this is a turning of an age. And these books are books that remember the golden age that took place a long time ago. And they were good books to have when looking back on the golden age gave us heart. When we could think, things were perfect. And so nothing terrible can happen. But that's not the right story to have anymore. Now our story is that terrible things can happen, and they will, unless we work and strive to prevent them. And we have to look forward instead of looking back. So these are beautiful books. See, look at the illustration on this. Isn't this lovely? But it's time for it to go. This book is finished.
And as the smoke rises up from these books of the golden past, the last strains of the song are heard as well. And Belby, you, I think, are going to tell us 2 stories of growth in your epilogue.
That's right. I think, we see Belby return to the village, and, unpack what turned out to be like a lot of tiny pockets in her, vest and garments, and a lot of like small things come out, right? Like a coin, some other little jars, contents unspecified, and then some small jewels, like just small ones, not going to break the economy of our community or anything, just enough to set Belby up comfortably. And eventually she pulls out that lock of hair that's the gift, and turns it over in her hands. And then we see kind of a few days later, it's getting on to be cold again, but not quite cold enough for skating. And she goes over to meet, what looks like it's kind of the person in the village who's the most of like a librarian or a scholar, who looks pretty angry when she turns up, and she tries to talk her way in with cocoa and something to enliven the cocoa. And there's kind of, a kind of curio cabinet that has like a notable missing spot in it. But she's, they're chatting, and they wind up pulling out what looks like a bestiary, and there's lots of animals in it, that are all strangely illustrated from our point of view as big people. Like they're clearly a lot of normal animals from the big people world that stories about wound up in this small people book. And as they turn over the pages together, the scholar of the village kind of softens as Belby is telling stories. And as they're drinking more, like there's annotation of the images, like in a careful hand by the scholar, and then sometimes like commentary by Belby on the sides. And so finally, they're just extremely drunk. And they're both kind of fallen asleep by the fire. And you can just see on the book that lock of hair has now been placed on the image of the horse. Because the lock that Belby's been carrying is from the horse of the man that we all befriended early in our journey, who at first frightened us, but then was the one who passed on the locket to Belby, and she's kept the lock of the horse after he let her have a ride on it, very unsuccessfully, by the way.
So is this an old book is read aloud and a truce is sealed?
It is.
Beautiful. What a lovely epilogue. Last but not least, let's turn to Harding. And Harding, everyone gets to tell a story of growth, but I think you are telling us also 2 stories of isolation because of those unnamed burdens you've brought all the way back to your hometown here.
Yes, and I think as Harding, as I think you kind of see as everybody sort of as we get back to our home, and like we all sort of like split off our separate ways to kind of visit our places. Harding's steps start to slow, and because he knows where he has to go first. And he trudges like the March of the Damned back to the home of his parents. And we see them open the door, and they see him, and their faces start to brighten. And as they try to look over his shoulder or behind him, their faces darken, and like they look at him with this growing horror at the realization that he is the only one that's come back. And like you just sort of see, like, you know, if we're looking at this like sort of an epilogue like video panel, like that door that when it was first open was all of this like hearth light shining out of it, like just a image of a classic happy homecoming. It's like, you know, as Harding turns away, like that fire inside has died, and his mother and father are holding each other in that doorway as he trudges away. And they don't reach out to him. They don't like reach for him. And he trudges again, slowly, but with maybe a little bit of a raised step, just to put some distance between himself and that scene. You see him turn slowly back to towards his, the sort of little stilt network where he and his sister like had built their little homes. Neither one of them had started a family or anything yet, but they had built their homes close together because they had always been close. And as he turns down, like, he sees that a storm has come up, and like those homes have been broken, and they haven't been able to rebuild them. And there was no one here to rebuild them, like, because their parents were older, they weren't in a space to build them. A lot of the people who would be young enough and strong enough to do that building had been drafted for other duties. So you kind of see like their homes are just, sort of broken, and parts of the walls have fallen in, parts of the roof thatch has broken in, and it's, all like, just mushy and dirty and just all just scattered around. And he's just trudging through, seeing these, seeing the water rot slowly take over the houses, because if you don't keep up these homes in the swamp, like, they're just going to basically crumble because it's all wood. And if you're not able to maintain it, the swamp takes it back. The swamp always wants to be just the swamp again. And so you kind of see that as he walks through, and he goes over to his little hut, and his hut was smaller, like just like his ambitions generally. Like it was just basically like a little add-on to the back of this place that his sister really had built up. And so he trudges past her home that's sort of fallen into disrepair, and then he finally gets back to his, and his is slightly more together than hers, just because it was shielded by hers during the storm. So like only a small part of his roof has been caved in, and the rest of the building is basically intact, because it was in the lee of his sister's home when the storm blew through. And he reaches in to like one of his little cupboards, and he pulls out a small little wrapped oil wrapped package, something designed to preserve something precious in a humid and musty kind of environment, just like the swamp. And he leaves the little town and like goes up and like takes a small little punting boat just out to one of the big cypresses that has a couple of just watch stands on it. And he goes out, and out near the watch stand, there's a little swimming hole that a lot of the kids use. It's sort of basically, it's not part of the main swamp. It's like basically just a depression that fills up with rainwater after a good storm, and it doubles as kind of a safe space to swim, because you don't have to deal with the fish and the eels and other things that might cause you trouble if you tried to actually swim in the swamp itself. And so a lot of the kids from the village are playing there, and he sits up on the watchtower, and he unwraps this package, and it's a flute that he had learned to play so that he could play backup for his sister's song. And he can never remember all the words of the song, because that was hers. She was the singer. She was the voice. He was just the background. He was the support. He was the supporting instrument. But he plays the tune, and the song, he starts to hear the words again. And it's the children who had listened to his sister sing the song. When they heard the tune, they're singing it happily as they play in that basically that giant mud puddle. And that sort of buoys him back up, and where we see him close is him just playing that song with sort of halting breaths as he hears the words come back to him. Sort of broken, maybe a little off, maybe the kids are misremembering a few parts of it, but it's her song.
That's wonderful. May I add one more detail as we close out? I wonder if maybe kind of unseen by Harding, but seen by the watchers for just a moment, Harding's shadow seems to almost flicker, and it's almost like there's a crown on his head in the shadow. And that was Back Again from the Broken Land. Thank you all for playing. And for anyone watching or listening along, thanks for joining us. Stay safe out there and have a good night.